Hi everybody, welcome to the second tasting we're doing. A little bit smaller than the last one and a little bit more focused. So we're going to be kicking off the Peated Islay Scotches tastings right now. And we're going to start with a Scotch that's a little bit less on the peated side of things to kind of ramp into things for those of us who aren't super acclimated to the really smoky, bolder, robust peated flavors that go into some of these Scotches. And you know, this might not be one that a lot of you have heard of, maybe some of you have, but it's from a distillery that itself proclaims to be the oldest licensed distillery on Islay. So in that particular region of Scotland that has become really well known for these peated smoky Scotches. And that distillery is Bowmore. And we're going to be trying the Bowmore 12. The 12-year-old expression of Bowmore, it's the youngest in their core range, meaning that if you want to start somewhere with, I believe, the least expensive and the youngest whiskey that it releases year-round all the time that you could almost always find on the shelf, depending on where you go, this is it. And you know, I've actually never had a single whiskey from Bowmore. There are some other Scotches that we're going to try that I've not had before that specific, I guess, age statement or bottling, but I've had others from the distillery. This one's going to be brand new to me, but from what I've heard, it's going to be a pretty good one to start with. So, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Bowmore, they say that they are the oldest licensed distillery from the island of Islay, which is on the southwest coast of Scotland. They say they've been around since 1779. It's the oldest recorded mention of Bowmore that they've been able to find, although according to Bowmore, rumor has it that they've been distilling for about 10 years at that point. And then in the 200 plus years that have passed, I don't know that there's ever been a time that Bowmore is closed. At least they haven't really publicized that. It has passed ownership a few times, as is pretty common in the spirits industry, but they almost always keep at least some portion of the name Bowmore. And I think most recently, I think in 2014, they were purchased by Beam Suntory. So the same company that owns all the Suntory Japanese whiskeys and Jim Beam and all those bourbons and ryes that are released in the US, they now own Bowmore. So let's start talking about this specific bottle. Again, it's 12 years old. It's 40% ABV, so it's the has the lowest alcohol content to be legally called a whiskey and Scotch whiskey. And I don't really know a whole lot about what it's aged in. It doesn't really specify what sort of barrels it's aged in. My guess is it's probably refilled oak barrels, but I can't say for sure. I don't think there's any finish on this one, but again, I don't know for sure. Maybe we'll learn a little bit more when we taste it, but I do know that it's peated. Like every whiskey we're going to be having in this tasting, it has been the barley, when it was on the malting floor, has been dried to some extent with peat smoke. And so we're going to pick up a little bit of that, but it is supposed to be a little bit lighter compared to some of the other ones they're going to be trying. So I think it's a good one to start for that reason and because it's the lowest ABV. So let's open this one up, give it a pour, give it a nose, give it a taste, see what we think. I smell the smoke already. Got a wee dram here. And if you take a look at the color, it doesn't look too dark. I don't know if you remember the Ardbeg 10 from Advent, but that one, obviously it's 2 years younger, was a lot lighter, didn't really have much color to it. In my understanding, this doesn't say anywhere on the bottle or the box that it came in that it's either non-chill filtered or that there's no coloring added. My understanding is that it is both chill filtered and has some added color. You know, there are good whiskeys that fit both of those profiles, even though it's generally not what a lot of folks look for all the time. So let's just see what we think. So on the nose, it's fairly obvious to me starting out. You might get that smoke if you're not familiar, or at least if you don't try a whole lot of peated whiskeys that often. That might be the first thing that hits you in the face. For me, it's sort of like a background note or a background constant that's there. But what jumps out at me are some fruity notes, maybe a little bit tropical. Yeah, hard to place them exactly. You get a little bit of the, the base kind of malted barley there. I think if you smell a little bit deeper, which is I think what a lot of scotches sort of start out as, it's almost like the foundation of a scotch, the flavor profile in a lot of them until it becomes covered up with something else. But yeah, the first thing I noticed on this is those tropical fruits and then maybe a background of smoke. So almost like if you've been cooking some fruit or something like that, and then you have like in the background, like a block away or something, there's this campfire, and you get a little bit of that background smell too, but not too strong. Maybe a little bit of that medicinal iodine note, but that might just be kind of the combination of the fruity smells and the smoke instead of a separate note. I'm not really sure about that. We will be trying one, I think the very next one we're going to try is going to have a lot more of that medicinal iodine flavor to it and smell, so you'll get a little bit of a better sense of what I'm talking about if you're not familiar already. Okay, let's give it a taste, see what we think. More smoke on the palate, I think, but I think it's a very soft, subtle sounds like is probably the wrong word to use because it is obvious, but yeah, a softer smoke. It's not something that's super punchy. It's not offensive at all. It just seems kind of like a rounded smoke. So on that first sip, I'm not really picking up a lot of those fruity flavors though, even though I still get them a little bit on the nose. Let's give it another try. Yeah, maybe a touch of vanilla. But the fruit, yeah, I'm not really picking up on that fruit at all. Yeah, like vanilla, soft smoke, nothing terribly complex. The finish gets maybe a little bit more sour, maybe a little bit more bitter. But again, not offensive and not really strong. Everything about this just seems really soft to me. I don't know if you'll feel that way, just because I do feel like, your mouth is kind of coated in almost like a smoky flavor, at least mine is right now, even though this isn't a particularly viscous scotch, I don't believe. At 40%, I didn't really expect it to be, but even though my mouth does feel almost coated with that smoky flavor, it's kind of light, at least compared to a lot of other peated scotches. Okay, maybe a little bit more fruit now as we're getting into it, and I think my mouth is getting a little bit more acclimated to the smoke. Almost like a melon or like a honeydew. Again, really soft, really subtle. I'm starting to think that the reason all these flavors are subtle, it has less to do with the particular way the scotch is made, or it being 12 years as opposed to like 15, 18, or 25, which I believe are the other ones in Bowmore's core range, and more to do with the fact that it's only 40% ABV. So I think if we tried this at a cask strength or straight from the barrel or something like that, my guess is the flavors are all going to be a lot more punchy, but it's hard to tell exactly what's going to dominate. Maybe the peat would be a little too much if we had it at cask strength, and I don't know that Bowmore actually sells any of its scotches at cask strength. They might for some of the older ages, but I'm not 100% sure. There are independent bottlers in the Scotch whiskey industry, so companies that will buy barrels or new make from different Scotch distilleries, and then they'll either bottle them themselves and sell them, or they will age them however they want to age them further, either in the barrels they came with or different ones, and then bottle them. I'd be curious to try a independent bottler's release of some Bowmore spirit, although because Bowmore is a bit of a bigger name, I think when you get into like the snobby echelons of Scotch whiskey, my understanding is that those independent bottlings of Bowmore at cask strength are pretty expensive, maybe prohibitively so, but I don't know. Give this one more taste. Yeah, soft vanillas again. So I think I have a pretty good understanding of how this tastes. I do like it. Hard to say on the first tasting whether I think it really stacks up to some of the other ones, other distilleries on Islay that are doing some pretty good stuff with peated Scotch whiskeys. But I do appreciate that it does have a very different flavor profile than anything I recall from some of the other peated scotches on Islay, or peated scotches in general. So I think that's pretty cool. Glad we included it here. Glad you got to taste it. And I'm glad it's the first one too, and that this is going to be kind of a smoother introduction into peated scotches. I hope you liked it. I did. Didn't knock my socks off, but it was enjoyable for a first one. And looking forward to seeing all of you next time around. Cheers.